What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Match Review. My name is Joshua Joshi Howard, and today we're going to be talking about a game that took place on the Tactical Tortoise stream earlier today between Sam Young and Ken Edwards. And Sam was playing guard, and Ken was playing Tau. And if you were watching, so firstly, I apologize. I might sound a little bit different. It has gotten a lot colder, and so I'm trying to bundle up a little bit more up here in the Pacific Northwest. Anyway, Sam was playing guard and Ken was playing Tau. One of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this game is both these players are currently rated in these like 1650-ish area, which puts them both in the top 2 or 3% of players for people who go into GTs. It's a pretty good bar. In general, I kind of use 1600 as my bar for like good player. If you are like 1600 or above, you are roughly the equivalent of like platinum in League of Legends, if that means anything to any of you guys. But it means that you're roughly like the top 10%, and anything above 1600 very rapidly like starts to skyrocket in terms of like what the ELOs mean beyond that. Anyway, I didn't want to take a look at it because not only were these two relatively strong players, it was a game that was, it might not have looked like a blowout immediately, but there was some mistakes made on the top of one that made this game untenable for Sam pretty much right away, and I kind of want to talk about it a little bit. So before we go too quickly into this, let's go ahead and take a look at the list that both the players were taking, starting with Sam. Sam was playing a pretty normal looking combined arms list. It's not exactly the style that I am currently preferring, but it's pretty normal. Like, there's nothing in here that's like weird overall. You have Gaunt's Ghost, a Commissar, one Rogaldorn Commander with the Grand Strategist enhancement, a second Rogaldorn Commander, 1 unit of 10 Cadians, 2 units of 10 Catachan, 2 units of Kazarkin, 1 unit of 5 Krieg Engineers, 10 Rattlings, 2 Toraxes, 1 Leman Exterminator with Plasma Cannons, 2 Leman Vanquishers, both with multi-meltas, and then 2 Scout Sentinels, both with Las Cannons. Overall, pretty normal stuff. Is this like a hyper optimized guard list? No, but there's nothing in here that's like, that's bad. So, like, it's just a pile of relatively good data sheets. His opponent, Ken, was playing Tau, and this was a Kauyon list, and again, it's fairly normal looking stuff overall. It has Commander Shadow Sun as the only character, 1 Breacher team put inside a Devilfish, 1 Ghost Keel, 3 Riptides, 1 unit of 10 Crew Carnivores, 1 unit of 2 Crutox Riders, 2 units of 3 Stealth Suits, 1 unit of Pathfinders, 1 unit of 5 Vespid Stingwings, a Hammerhead, 2 Skyrays, and then 2 Piranhas. And this is fairly normal if you've been watching, in particular, Durante, Glenacier, Bozzini. We've been seeing stuff fairly similar to this for a while. This might be like a carbon copy of the list that Dante has been playing for a while. So it's a pretty good looking and pretty normal looking Kauyon list as well. Before we actually talk about the game, let's go ahead and talk about some of the keys to this matchup and why, and this will help frame what some of the things I'm going to be saying later really mean in the rest of the context. So the first thing I kind of want to talk about, and I will go ahead and hide me so I'm not in front of any of the words. Tau has been a matchup that has, for most of 10th edition, been pretty good for guard. It's not necessarily something where we are going to get a lot of blowouts, but it was fairly consistently, we would be on the top half of a draw. So we were the ones generally playing for a 10 to a 12, whereas the Tau were going to be a little bit on the back foot. 10 to 12, of course, in teams terms means that we're probably going to win somewhere between 5 and 10-ish, like somewhere between 5 and 15 points. Like, we have a little bit of leeway. However, it's changed quite a bit recently, where I feel like this is a lot more drawish than it used to be. And instead of guard being the side that's playing for the 10 to 12, in general, it's Tau that's playing for like a 10 or an 11. And in general, I think for guard, a lot of these Kauyon lists are looking like a 9. So we're expected to lose by maybe 5 points, but it's well within reach of something that we can still win. But it's going to be a very close fought game, even in the best circumstances. And a couple of the reasons for this are Tau have been receiving a lot of changes over the past couple of months. Over the past several months, they've gotten several big things that have changed a lot of the math in terms of what it is that Tau does well. The first one is the change to guides. So the way that guides work now is you don't have to declare what you're guiding at the start of the shooting phase. And the biggest thing for this is it means that if you guide into a transport and kill the transport, you can still have an observer unit guide at the thing that just popped out of the transport. So you're a little bit better at killing Kazarkin or Catachan or anything that are getting out of a transport. Not the biggest thing in this particular game, but it is something that does make a pretty big difference in terms of their ability to rip apart our skirmishing units more effectively than they used to. The second change that's really important is Riptides. Their main gun went from strength 8 to strength 10. And that's a really, really big deal because against things like Chimeras and Rhinos, which are toughness 9, going from strength 8 and winning on 5s to strength 10 and winning on 3s is functionally plus 2 to wound. There are also some detachments like in Retaliation Cadre, or I think it's Experimental Prototype Cadre. Maybe it's auxiliary card. I don't remember. There's a couple of them where you can get this strength 10 weapon to strength 11 or 12, which means that they can potentially wound our Lehman Russes on 4s or even 3s. But in general, the other big thing is against Tauroxes, strength 8 to strength 10 means you were winning on 4s, now you're winning on 3s against our Tauroxes. And against Hellhounds, you were winning on 5s, you're now winning on 4s. So it changes a lot of the math that Riptides have into our medium vehicles. And Riptides are much more consistent and actually doing significant damage or even killing these vehicles in ways that they were not doing before. Excuse me. The last big thing that has made Tau better is they've been getting a lot of points drops, or we've been getting points increases in general. This is a matchup where we used to outdrop them. We used to have like 2 or 3 more things fairly consistently, whereas nowadays this has shifted pretty considerably, and now we're the ones who are generally down 1 to 3 drops in terms of deployment. We're down 1 to 3 things in terms of just having bodies on the field, and that really adds up considering that Guard is one of the armies whose primary strength historically has been we are going to make you trade down in terms of the killing that's actually being done. You know, your jump pack intercessors are going to cost more than our Catachan. Our Kazarkin are going to be killing more than 110 points worth of stuff in our opponent's armies, and that is no longer necessarily true into Tau in particular, because their armies have gone down a little bit. So those are the big things that make Tau a little more difficult now than they used to be. Talking about the detachment a little bit, Kauyon gains sustained hits and ignore mods starting in battle round 3. So in general, one of the things that we're trying to do when we're playing up against Kauyon is we want to put the pressure on turns 1 and 2 so we can build an early primary advantage when our opponent can't necessarily kill us nearly as effectively as they need to. And the way that we typically want to do this is if our opponent is bad and lets us just kill their Hammerheads and Skyrays and Riptides, we're going to do that, right? We're going to kill their ability to deal with our Rogel Dorns later on in the game, and by turn 4 or 5, suddenly the Rogel Dorns are basically unkillable. However, against better opponents, what we're generally going to be trying to do is we're going to remove as many of our opponent's small things as possible to force our opponent to play with the Hammerheads, Skyrays, and Riptides to do actions with them. Suddenly, if they draw a cleanse and they have to do cleanse with a Hammerhead, that's a Hammerhead that's not shooting at one of our tanks. And if we can get rid of their Vespid, their Crew, their Piranhas, their Pathfinders early on, we can make them play the game with pieces that they don't really want to. A couple other keys to this one. It was played on Terraform Crucial Battle, and Terraform is a mission that gives a bit of an advantage to the person going first in general, because you can terraform objectives. It's really high primary scoring in general, and you can use your turn 1 to stand on objectives when you don't have anything to shoot. You go ahead and put out a 5-man engineer unit, you put some Catachan, you terraform the objective. That's probably going to score you points over the course of the game, whereas your opponent not only needs to spend an action to counter terraform you, they also need to kill you off of the objective. Otherwise, you're going to get a couple of extra points here and there over terraform, and I think terraform is like one of the few missions that actually has a slightly better win rate for the player going first than the player going second. However, it is being played on Layout 2, which is a sniper's delight because there are tons of really long shooting lanes. This is generally not good for Guard because while we do have weapons that are 36, 48, 72-inch range, they're not the bulk of our damage, especially in vehicle shootouts. The bulk of our vehicle damage in vehicle shootouts actually comes from multi-meltas, which are only 18-inch range. And so if we're just getting into really long-range duels between Rogel Dorns and Hammerheads and Skyrays, we will, it becomes really, really swingy. We can do a lot of damage, especially if we can stack an Exterminator's Withering Hail with Fields of Fire. Suddenly, the Rogel Dorn's main gun is 12-4-3, and we can rip apart some of these tanks at long range. However, if we don't just like kill them outright and they get a chance to shoot back, it's not ridiculous that they just kill a Rogel Dorn on the crackback. So it becomes a game where it's really important for us to close the gap, make sure that we kill them in one volley, not allow them to shoot back at us. Whereas if we just get into this really long range shooting gallery, we're generally going to be losing. We want to play the mid board, we want to play aggressive, we want to put pressure on the Tau. All right, let me bring myself back in. Okay, so this is what it looks like for Sam. Sam is, of course, green in the top right, and then Ken is in the bottom left. And this is what the deployment actually looks like. And there's a couple of things I want to point out. So the first one, does this work? Okay, so this Thorax is in generally a pretty good spot. We want to put in a lot of pressure. We have a unit of Ratlings here. I don't remember exactly when this was deployed, but it blocks out like the Piranha Scout, the Kroot Scout. I don't know if Krutok's Rider Scouts, but Piranha Scout. Like we're blocking a lot of the useful scouts for our opponent in this spot. These Pathfinders here are kind of doing the same thing. Pathfinders are in a lot of ways like budget Kazarkin. They're cheaper, they don't do as much, but they're still like 4-up bodies that are annoying to remove. And this is a threat to potentially just go this way, be annoying. One of the big things that I look at this is actually one of the few matchups where I do think the order of deployment matters a lot. And a big reason that you can see is Tau have Skyray. This looks like second Skyray and Riptide all back here in the castle. Guard has one Rogel Dorn and one Vanquisher also back here in the castle. And one of the big reasons why order of deployment matters fairly heavily is a lot of this stuff is not going to like change where it's going to be very often. However, as you can see, there's this giant dead zone of our deployment zone that we are not using. It's a huge portion of our deployment zone that is currently not doing anything. And depending on how many tanks our opponent like puts into this firing line or here, where they can move towards the northwest corner and then shoot down this way, we can potentially put like more stuff in this section. And especially because we're playing an army where if we go second, we're in a really tough spot anyway, because Kauyon effectively gets an extra turn of that sustained and ignore mods, and like we're also playing going second on Terraform. This is a kind of a game where we have to play to go first, and if we go second, it's already an uphill battle anyway, so we don't want to be in a position where we're playing too scared. With all this in mind, we need to be ready to put a lot of pressure on our opponent immediately right out the gate. And a couple of keys to this deployment in general is this is a spot where we can generally send a Torox. It can go 6 plus 15 is 21, and then in advance, so it can go like up to 27 inches. I don't know what this distance is off the top of my head, but 6, 10, so 16. So this is probably like about 20 inches between the two corners of these ruins. So it's fairly easy for this Torox to just end up here and being able to fire down this way. Maybe if we roll high, we can shoot at like stealth suits or something hiding behind this ruin. But the other big thing is this right here. If we can get our Torox to stand right here, we can disembark guys here, we can disembark guys here, and suddenly anything behind this ruin is not actually safe. The problem is with the current deployment that Sam has gone for is this Torox, and I believe this is a proxy of some kind, is going to eat up a lot of movement trying to get around this exterminator. So problem one, or this problem, these two things need to be trading spaces. They need to be backwards to how they currently are, especially because it's really difficult for our opponent to shoot like real anti-tank. They have like a Piranha, which like if it gets lucky, it can like pop a Torox. Excuse me. It doesn't have to get that lucky, but it has to get a little bit lucky to pop the Torox. And the Exterminator is relatively safe here. Like these I think this is Katachan, it might be Kazarkin, I'm not entirely sure. It's going to scout up into this ruin anyway, where it's going to be pretty safe. And so we can use that to like park our Exterminator here and our Torox right behind it. Okay, so in general, this deployment is really, really reserved. I would have loved to see if like one of these tanks, we deploy it late in the deployment phase. Maybe we can put a Vanquisher here or something. Just something in this space because it's so much dead space and we're losing so much. If you just kind of take a look at it, we're more or less like playing Hammer and Anvil with an Infiltrating Sentinel. Like it's just really, really far back in ways that we don't have to be. Okay, so we have all this. The other reason why you might be asking, but Josh, if we take a look at what's going on the other side of the board, Tau has done a similar thing. And that's okay. Tau is allowed to do that in ways that we really aren't. Because one, they have, basically as many skirmishing pieces as we do. They have a lot of little things that are able to play the game in ways that are really annoying for us. And the other reason why they're allowed to do it in ways that we are not is their damage comes online later in the game, whereas our damage, it starts the highest on turn 1 and 2, and then it kind of falls off as we lose units. Whereas Tau, they actually get every single one of their units gets more damage as soon as you hit battle round 3. So it's okay for them to play a slower game into us because they're going to get power-ups later on in the game, whereas we are not going to. Okay. So this is what happens during the scout moves. All of the guard moves are going to be done in red, and all of the Tau moves are going to be done in blue. And we can quickly see one of the big issues with this is if we are going first, we need to be putting on a lot of pressure going up against the Tau. And this Taurox here, which just scouted this way, is not going to be able to do that, right? If we are looking originally, if this Taurox was able to come over here, drop over here, put guys and go bam, bam, this Taurox can't do anything, right? If it gets move, if we accept that like this is about 20 inches between these two corners, it's like an additional 5 inches, so it's like 25 inches. So this Taurox needs to roll at least a 5 in order to shoot like down this way at all with anything that is inside the Taurox. And that's just too slow. We need to be ready to step on the gas immediately. The other big thing is I think this is a Catachan unit. Being behind here is once again just too slow, right? If this had been deployed, something like this, and we go first, and it scouts into this corner, it's basically gotten an entire extra turn of movement. Excuse me. And then this scout is good. This scout is good. Just make sure, try and keep these within 12 if you can, so that you can get the move order. But in general, the idea is, once again, this army is too far back. And as we go into the movement phase, we can see that it ends up being like a half all in, and Sam does not send all of his army forward all at the same time. So, big thing here, Krieg Engineers come out. This is good. They secure no man's land, and they're going to terraform this objective. These, I think they're Catachan, whatever they are, they're going to establish a locus, score 2 points. They don't need to be on this objective in order to get secure no man's land. So these guys could probably relatively safely like stand here, but by putting them here as well, you're asking your opponent to shoot you off of the middle objective. That stuff makes sense. This Taurox Eat, I think actually it makes a lot of sense considering where it is. Couple of big notes here. Shooting the Ghost Keel, super trap. You're not going to kill a Ghost Keel with Kazarkin. You can do a lot of damage in terms of like mortals. Like I would probably throw a grenade and chuck a Meltamine into this Ghost Keel. But realistically, we're trying to get rid of this unit here. Remember, we're trying to get rid of our opponent's ability to play the game with little units. Okay, Ratlings move up, and they're gonna try, and do some damage to like the Krutox, whatever. Ratlings do almost no damage anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But that's where our pressure being put on our opponent stops. And did I do? I did not. I don't think. No, I did not. And one of the big things about this is I think this is an underestimation of like the sight lines that really exist on this board in terms of what it is that Sam can really do. And so the first one is I know he was like drawing a line with a laser at some point to see if there like this line existed, and from my perspective as an observer, it looks like it probably did. I don't know if that's true. But this line here, if you can get this to shoot at the Pathfinders up here, not only do you have better information on like how much of the Kazarkin need to shoot at these, they're also going to be doing it with +1 AP. There's a decent chance you just wipe the unit of Pathfinders all at once. The other big thing, and this is going to come back to bite Sam in just a moment, or there's a couple. There's actually a couple big things. The first one is this Dorn moves over here when it probably should have been this Dorn moving here just to be a little bit more forward on the board. However, there's absolutely a line from this spot right here. If this Dorn is here, wholly within this ruin, there's a line here. You can definitely shoot at the Crutox. You can probably shoot at the Piranha as well. And you're going to be right in this line. I think the fear that he had was that the Sky Ray, or like Sky Ray, like Riptide, can definitely shoot you back. However, we need to be putting pressure on our opponent, and we don't put pressure on our opponent by only sending small parts of our army out immediately. If we want to be putting pressure on our opponent, it needs to be the entire army all at the same time. So, coming out here, if we were able to pick up like these Crutox Riders, maybe kill this Piranha, great. The other major thing that's coming out is down along the bottom. So, Sam ends up taking this Vanquisher, and it comes all the way out. It sticks like a sponge in here, so it does get cover, but we're playing up against Tau, where cover is like not really a concept. But the big thing that you can note here is if you just take a look at like this straight line, there is going to be a line all the way down. However, this Piranha is so far forward, and you'll have to excuse the fact that I'm just drawing here with my mouse, but we can be behind that plane, stick our barrel like here, and have the rest of the tank hiding out over here. And if we take the minimum line for our Vanquisher to be shooting at this Piranha, this can't get there. This is too far, right? Knowing that this is 6 inches, I'm going to do some quick measurement. 6, 6, that's almost 18 inches necessary for this, what do you call it? Sky Ray in order to get into that line that the Piranha is currently presenting to us. By taking this Vanquisher, if we are trying to like play like a slow game on this side, we need to take this minimum line instead of showing our entire tank to our opponent. The last big thing is a concept that I've kind of talked about in general in terms of the go turn, and something that my buddy Tim Grant actually brought up. If you're going to show me your army, you either need to show me less than I can kill or more than I can kill. And if you show me the exact amount that I can kill, it's a problem. And we are rapidly approaching the like exact amount of stuff that Ken can actually kill, right? Sky Ray, Riptide should probably kill this, but it might not. All this stuff over here is more than enough to kill Kazarkin and Torox. These Ratlings are relatively easy to kill with just a bunch of random nonsense. Sam ended up playing them as toughness 3. They're actually only toughness 2, so there's supposed to be a couple of extra wounds that have gone through, but the unit like ends up dying anyway, so it doesn't really matter. We have shown our opponent bang on almost exactly the amount of stuff that they can kill. Which means that if like this Dorn and this Vanquisher were also out in the open, we're rapidly approaching the spot where there is too much. There are too many things out in the open for our opponent to kill, and therefore, even if they kill, it's kind of like watching that like Revolutionary War, right? You line up, you go, bang, we lose some number of guys, but there's still enough ready to go in the next part of it. Okay, so with all this in mind, major issues are, one, if this can see this, cool. If it can't, it doesn't. It either needs to be like we either need to have like all of these tanks out in the open. However this is done, like this probably goes here, and this should probably be here. We either have all the tanks in the open, or we have none of the tanks being able to get shot. Okay. So the next thing that we take a look at is the damage that actually gets done. So as we advance to the shooting phase, we have our Kazarkin here. There must not have been a line here. Like Sam either made an ordering mistake or a positioning mistake, where this exterminator did not shoot. These Kazarkin just shot here. And, you know, if that's all that's available, great. In order to kill this unit, you generally need to throw a grenade as well, which I don't think Sam did. I don't remember. But the other big thing is taking this Vanquisher and putting one Vanquisher out. He shot at the Devilfish, I believe, and while like the Hunter Killer hit, it did more than zero damage. The Vanquisher cannon missed. Right, we just don't really have the firepower in order to kill the entire Devilfish with a Vanquisher unless we get lucky. However, we don't need to get that lucky shooting at the Piranha. So I would have much rather, if we were going to go ahead and do this, don't shoot at the Devilfish, shoot at the Piranha. We're just trying to reduce the unit count as quickly as possible. Over here, we had the Rattlings go ahead and shoot. They did, I think it's 4 damage to this Krutux Rider. It wasn't enough. And ultimately, we end up putting out all of this, and we kill 0 units. That's not great, but the bigger issue that we have immediately afterwards is what we do with these Rattlings. So one of the big things about Rattlings, because they are infiltrating, right? You have your deployment zone. Oops. Deployment zone is going to be something like that, right? We're not doing great lines. But by having our guys 9 inches away here, this is 9, they move 6. So we are now 3 inches away from the deployment zone, whatever that is. And then this Devilfish and this Piranha were basically on the line when they were deployed. You know what that means? That means that from here, from this line to this Devilfish, is a 3-inch charge. Tau has like half their army flies, and the other half of their army, or it's actually kind of the same half of the army, also all have access to fall back and shoot. Taking up this real estate, the only thing that we do with this move, shoot, move, is we take up some space that the Krutux Riders can no longer go through. However, instead of going for the move, shoot, move, if we had taken these Rattlings and charged into this Devilfish, we might have been able to tag Devilfish, tag Piranha, and have the rest of our unit strung out something like this in a way that we aren't getting heroic by the Krutux Riders. And if we tag this, the Devilfish, you cannot disembark after you fall back. So then the Breachers inside have to hop out like here, shoot the Rattlings, or they're stuck in the Devilfish for a turn. I don't think you're allowed to guide if you fell back, but I'm not sure about that. Either way, the Piranha does not have access to fall back and shoot, so we can prevent both of these units from really doing anything on the next turn. It forces our opponent to just like put a unit on this objective without killing the engineers, which means they have an entirely active unit of engineers on our next turn. And that's kind of the other major issue that we saw in turn 1. So stylistically, or like in terms of the whole plan, Sam ends up putting out a bunch of small units that end up not being able to do, like put the pressure on that we really needed them to. And then this move, shoot, move with the Rattlings, instead of just taking them and charging over here in order to tie up our opponent, limit their options available to them right off the bat, we end up putting very little pressure on our opponent. We end up getting like 7 Pathfinders and like 4 wounds off a Krutux Rider. We don't actually do almost any damage to an opponent on turn 1. The crackback coming out of Ken is a lot. So let's go ahead and take a look at what happens in Ken's turn. And this is going to be fairly fast. We're not really going to talk about this game past turn 2, because after turn 2, the game becomes untenable really quickly because of how much scoring is going to be possible for Ken later on and not possible for Sam. But this Devilfish, like we just talked about, as one that was going to be tied up if it was charged and just there, we now allow the Devilfish to come out over here and put out a bunch of Breachers on this, and they kill most of this engineer unit. I think we also counter-terraform this objective, which would require another action on our part to turn things around. The Piranha that was in our line taking that 3-inch charge is now here where it can guide, and it does have like 2 Seeker missiles and like a Melta 4 Melta-gun. Like it actually does have like some firepower. The Krutux Riders coming out, the Carnivores are coming out, and just as we were talking about before, where we're trying to take like the minimum line here, by not taking the minimum line, the Riptide and one of the Skyrays can now come down here. And between Riptide, Skyray, like some Seeker missiles from the Devilfish, and the Piranha, this Vanquisher is almost assuredly dead. There's just too much firepower coming out. The other big thing is that Ken doesn't make the same mistake in terms of understanding the lines on the board as Sam did, because this Hammerhead moves over here, gets wholly within, and what do you know? There's a line directly into this Lehman Russ that was not used on the other side. Skyray, Riptide. Does this Riptide move further? No. I don't remember if this Riptide was able to get line of sight onto this Lehman Russ or not, but regardless, like, we line up a ton of stuff. This should expect to be dead. This should expect to be dead. All of these guys should expect to be dead, and the Lehman Russ should expect to be dead. Like, we have given our opponent access to too many things to shoot, almost exactly the number of things that they are capable of killing, they're going to kill. And as we take a look at what happens, pretty much that exactly comes around. This Sentinel takes 4 damage up here. Kazir can die. Torox dies. 3 out of the 5 Engineers die. The Rattlings die. The Vanquisher dies. The Exterminator dies. Okay? A ton of stuff in the army just dies. And I kind of want to, I normally don't do this very often, but I just kind of want to take a look at like what has actually happened in terms of like the points in terms of the army. So we lost 1 unit Kazirkin. Most of this, so this is down to 3, or down to 2. This is gone, this is gone, this is gone, and this is gone. And I'm going to do some math as part of this recording. I don't recommend doing this, but this is what it looks like being unprepared. So we lost 110 points of Kazirkin, and then we lost Engineers are 12 points a model. We'll call it 30 points of Engineers. We lost 75 points of a Torox. We lost an Exterminator is 180, and then we lost 145 points of a Vanquisher. This totals up to, if we call, oh, and then Rattlings, I think they're 100 points for 10? I don't know. We're going to call it 75. I don't want to look it up. But regardless, we have lost like 610 points or more of the army coming out of this on our opponent's turn 1. This is when our opponent is not supposed to be at their strongest. They don't have access to their sustain. They don't have access to a ton of like offensive strats coming out. So we've lost like 610 points. On the other hand, what damage have we done to them? This is still 2 Krutox Riders. I don't know how many points Krutox Riders are. I'm going to guess it's like, I don't know, let's be generous and call it 100 points. And we killed most of them. So let's say we killed 40 points of Krutox Rider. I think that's overestimating it, but whatever. Pathfinders, these are like 90 points, and we killed 7 of them. So let's just call it 70. So, you know, we're overestimating here, but we killed 40 points and 70 points. Let's generously say we killed 110 points of our opponent's army on turn 1. Our opponent killed 600 points of our army on turn 1. Like, if we're going to be putting pressure on them, we need to set up such that our next turn is going to cripple our opponent. And going back to where we are here, right? We lost all of this. Our opponent's ways to kill our tanks are here, here, here. We can't get to them. This is more than 13 inches, right? Because we know this is 12. This piece, and this is definitely more than an inch. It looks like 2-ish. There's no way to draw a line onto these things. Like maybe we can draw a line onto the Riptide, depending on like how quickly we can move this. This Vanquisher, if it comes out, it can like shoot a Piranha, maybe. Right, we are very rapidly approaching a spot where our follow-up turn is not going to be doing hardly any damage at all. And as we actually take a look at what happens going into the movement phase, we see another unit of Kazirkin coming out. The Catachan that were here fell back in order to do a sabotage. This Dorn didn't really move. This Dorn moved a little bit. This Vanquisher moved a little bit. But our ability to like play this objective collapsed, right? We do not have any more OC. We do not have any more units that can go this direction. The only thing that can really play this objective for the rest of the game is like 1 Dorn. And these tanks are just going to be too far back to really participate in everything else that's going to be going out. As we move up our Catachan and our Kazirkin, We are now in a position where suddenly the game is we're throwing a lot of things at our opponent or to try and recoup some of the losses that we had relatively early on. And as we take a look, we actually did like a fair amount of damage. We kill a devilfish, we kill this piranha, we do like 5 damage to this ghost keel, we do like 10 damage to this hammerhead, we kill the last of the pathfinders, I think we kill like 2 of the 3 stealth suits. But we are once again approached with a problem of because we lost our exterminator that was here, this hammerhead is still alive. If we had been able to kill this hammerhead, we are suddenly in a position where our tanks can trundle out this way and do a lot of damage. But the hammerhead's alive. We didn't have the firepower, we didn't have the volume of fire necessary to win these long-range tank duels. We're suddenly in a position where, once again, we're giving our opponent almost exactly the amount of stuff that they can kill. So as we take a look at what Ken does, Ken moves Skyray here, Riptide here. This Skyray advances because it wasn't getting shot. It is probably, I think it gets shot next turn, but this Riptide is now taking time to move back in the other direction, and we're going to lose, or the guard is going to lose like almost all of, I think this is like 8 guys. Khazar can basically all die. This Torax is left on 2, and this Dorn just gets obliterated. So as we take a look at the end of this, with a couple of charges, oops, I ended it. But this is gone, right? There's 2 guys left here. There might be like 2 Khazarkin who are currently engaged. There's a 2-wound Torox. Entire Dorn is gone, and the engineers are gone. Guard is out of army, and we haven't even gotten to our opponent's Kauyon turn yet. The army of Sam, which lost, let's go back and do the same exercise. Pathfinders ended up dying. Piranha died. Devilfish died. So we are at the spot where, like, I think this is 90. I think this is also like 90. It might be 100. And a piranha is like 70, something like that. So 90 is 180, 70 is like 250. We add in a little bit of damage. Let's round it up, and we'll say like 350 points of our opponent's army is dead at the end of top 2. Whereas on our side, Khazarkin dead. This unit is mostly dead. This is dead. This is dead. This is dead. This is mostly dead. Dead, 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 mostly dead. I don't know which one of these they are, but it's like that, right? So we are rapidly approaching the part of the game where we are just out of resources. And the big thing for Sam, and I don't want to make this all doom and gloom because I think a lot of this is stuff that we can make work going forward in future games. Right, I end up talking a lot about this game, about mistakes that Sam has made in this game, and did allow Ken to pull ahead. But here are some things that I want to put into your mind for how to play future games. First one, know the matchup. Know the matchup. This is a game where we have to put a lot of pressure on our opponent, and if we go second, we are probably going to lose anyway. We need to be in a position where we're going to be putting a lot of pressure on our opponent from the get-go. How do we do that? 1, we need to understand that this is a distance that a Torax can clear in 1 turn. This is a distance that a Torax can clear in 1 turn. We can do a lot of damage here. We can potentially, if we get lucky, we can like do damage to the stealth suits, or we can do damage to the pathfinders up here. These don't necessarily need to do a lot of damage. They just need to be annoying. Tag this up, tag something else up. Okay, so that's the first thing. Understand that we need to be putting pressure on our opponent. 2, know the map. Know the map. So the big thing here is, again, of course, understanding that this angle exists if you stand in this ruin in the same way that it does over here, right? We need to understand how to use these angles that are a little bit less intuitive, especially if they involve standing on ruins. And we also need to understand that if we put like Catachan that are here, instead of having them here, this is effectively like we effectively lost a turn of movement on the Catachan. He ends up rolling a 6, so it ends up like kind of bailing himself out. But doing all this is really important. 3, cut minimum angles. Big example for this one is, again, this piranha, because it is so far and it is not part of this angle, right? Like this angle and the angle that the piranha are at are different angles. Use the minimum angle here in order to shoot it. If we do that, we can find a lot of ways where our opponent is not actually going to be able to shoot us back. In a similar way, right, if we had, let's imagine that there's, I don't know, we have a tank like here. Our tank doesn't need to be able to see this guy. It just needs to be able to see this guy. And from that, if we have our angle like this, note that that is a very different angle than this or this, right? This is an extra like 4 or 5 inches of movement that our opponent would need to shoot us back. And looking for these minimum angles in general is going to help us out quite a bit. Lastly, and this is the big one, put out more or less than they can kill. There we go. So you need to have a generally good understanding of how much damage your opponent actually can do in every single one of their turns and the amount of damage that they're going to be doing to us across the board. This army coming out from Tau, we should they're going to pretty reliably kill about 2 Leman Russes. They're not going to reliably kill 3 Leman Russes, but they can. They will super reliably kill 1 Leman Russ. But on average, they're expecting to kill about 2 Leman Russes. So if we show them 2 Leman Russes, they're going to kill that very consistently. If we show them 1 Leman Russ, they're going to kill it, but that means that the Leman Russ that we didn't show them can be in a position to shoot them back on the next turn. And the other big thing, if they can kill 2 Leman Russes, and we show them 3 Leman Russes and 2 Rogel Dorns, they can't kill all of it. We are now in a position where we are now going to shoot back at them immediately afterwards. The other big thing that we can do there is if we're not going to show our opponent a lot of our army, we want to show them very little of the army so that they can do basically no damage. Right? So if we are, once again, looking at how do we kill Pathfinders and how do we limit this side of the board, Ratlings could like almost end the game on this side, right? By forcing our opponent to lose an entire turn of functional movement with their Devilfish, lose a functional turn of movement with their Piranha and the Breachers inside, we can create a wall over here that our opponent actually can't cross if we go for the charge. And if we show them that, and we show them like 1 Torlax worth of Kazarkin, and everything else moves up into a potential line of fire for next turn. So let's imagine like this Vanquisher advances and moves to like here. This Dorn kind of hangs out where it is, and this Dorn like moves up to over here. The Exterminator is here. We're now doing a lot of pressure on our opponent. We're putting out a lot of threat onto anything that our opponent is doing without necessarily risking basically any of our army at the same time. So understanding how much of our army we want to be showing to our opponent at any given time ends up having a lot of effect, like trickle down effects that like trickle down through the course of the rest of the game. So I hope this has been useful in like actually understanding how this game goes. I believe the end score for this one was Ken got like 90 something, and I believe Sam ended up with about 60 points. Because even though Sam scored really well on turns 2 and 3, and actually got a lot more primary than he probably was supposed to, he just could not score on turns 4 and 5. He just like ran out of things. He couldn't stand on primary. He couldn't score many of the secondaries because he was out of army, and his opponent still had most of their army intact. And we rapidly got to a point in the game where the Kroot Carnivores were actually really difficult to take down. The Hammerheads, the Sky Rays ran out of things that could really kill them, and they could stand in places on the board very aggressively towards the end. Anyway, This has been a match review going through for Sam Young versus Ken Edwards happening at the Tennessee Elite Open. I want to give a quick thank you to Tactical Tortoise for running this stream, and I hope this has been helpful for all of you guys as you think about how to play some of your own games in the near future. For now, though, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you guys all next time. Bye bye.